Oh, just
All
just
right.
the recording.
Yep, there we go.
Okay.
We're on. All right. How is it going, ladies and gentlemen and ladies? Welcome to my show. My name is AK Rex, and I have my usual guests with me now. Usual, who were once new at some point a while back, but Joshua Ballze and Harry Wilson. Welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Harry. I saw your last interviews with Arson, and I was like, you know what, me and this guy, we should mix it up. We should have some fun.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I've always loved your stuff for ages. I've just always, used it as reference material. And so, yeah, it's a real pleasure to finally see you.
Oh, nice. Thanks, man.
Awesome. I really hoped that I could, have more people from completely different, places and areas to eventually be able to talk, about these kind of things. Because at the end of the day, let's be real, prehistoric and dinosaurs things related is amazing, and there is a reason why we all love it. So,
Yes.
before we proceed with the main topic, I just want to quickly plug in my Indiegogo campaign because I want you guys who are watching. I want you guys who are watching to support it, and of course, check this out. I've just launched recently the new one, right? So that's my giant pterosaurs stuff, and yeah, you can basically choose the perks, which allows you to purchase up to 1, 2, or 3 pterosaurs in a very good deal, both finished and unpainted models. And of course, do not forget to check out this campaign right here, which I will share in a second as well, which is my old Allosaurus campaign, which is already in demand and succeeded to get its minimum funds and above. So, but there's still perks available, and there are kits available through this campaign as well. So if anybody wants an Allosaurus, you can find it right there. And links will be in the description below. So now let's get into the main point of the video, shall we? So Josh, would you like to tell us why we're here?
Yeah, we're here to talk about cats. I wanted to just take a completely different subject because we've been talking about theropods since time began, it feels like. So I felt like it'd be nice to just divert away to a completely different animal, remind people that more than Tyrannosaurus Rex was around during the prehistoric era. And we're just going to talk about cats and mostly the tar pits. That's more or less where my background is. And then talk about any new discoveries that might have happened, which there were a lot. Like when I was doing research to get prep for this, Harry, I was going through papers and I was kind of like dumbfounded. Like there are so many things that have been updated since then. I was like, oh wow, there's definitely a lot that should be talked about in general.
Yeah, I was pretty amazed just to find some of the new species or newly renamed ones. Like, was Amphimacroides kabir, was it?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of scimitar cats. There's a lot of macroidids. There's a lot of papers, size estimates went all over the place. At one point, we knew what was as big as what. Now I'm like, I don't know. So, yeah, it'll definitely be a lot of catch up for us here.
Yeah, I agree. Especially me. I'm just like, wow.
I think the other thing to also look at is that you were right about the fact that theropods, they do get a lot of attention, but it's just to emphasize the point that theropods by no means were the only major prehistoric predators that played a major part in the evolutionary history of the megafauna. They just were at a different time, obviously, and they were obviously different, but this is the key here. We're going to talk about all these cool things. And Josh, is there anything you would like me to bring up on screen to start off with?
Let me see here. Let's try to do it with Harry. Harry, what subject would you like to dive into first? As far as the big cats, like, would you want saber cats, lions?
Gosh, I don't know. I suppose saber cats are a good way to bring it in. So let's do that.
Cool.
Okay, saber cats.
All right, cool. So.
Oh, wow. Nice. Awesome.
Yeah, I like to start off strong with my So this was something, I don't know if, were you told about this, Harry, that I had a few skull casts that I got, that I've had, and then that I've since ordered in prep for this interview.
No,
So
Alison said, you're going to get a bunch of surprises. That's all. I didn't expect it would be this intense.
Nope.
yeah, because I told Arson about this. I think it was over Christmas break for me. I think it was close to New Year's. I was like, hey, talk to Harry because we do want to start doing interviews with more international people. By the way, this is kind of the closest we'll get to time travel because Harry is technically in the future. Me and Arson are in the present.
I'm like borderline about to cross the portal, but not quite yet. Not there yet. In another maybe 1 hour and 50 so minutes.
Yeah, so this is the closest Doc Brown shenanigans we're gonna get. but I told Arson, like, okay, cool, I got some skull casts, and then I'm gonna order some more skull casts just to do actual in-person comparisons. And I thought he deferred all this info to you, but judging by your expression, you had no idea. So that makes it even more interesting.
Oh, this is great.
I actually wanted to keep it a surprise because obviously I know about all this stuff already. So I wanted to see Harry's reaction, immediately when he sees the skulls, when he sees all this stuff. Wait till you see some of the artwork as well.
Oh, wow.
And Josh is frozen for a little bit.
Yeah,
so we get to see we get to see the teeth as well. The saber fangs, whatever thingamajiggies. And
I've actually always had a question about the teeth. So I keep hearing this claim that supposedly Smilodon teeth are really fragile or something. Is that true, or is that complete nonsense?
I'm sorry, I froze a bit there. I don't know for how long.
You're clear now.
Okay, cool. Yeah, could you repeat the question?
With Smilodon teeth, I heard something that they're supposedly both like really brittle and they have to be very careful when biting throats, or is that complete nonsense?
Okay, so the way it works is we think about brittle teeth. We got to be very careful with species comparisons. Because biting cats are obviously the dominant cat species to have survived through the Ice Age. And biting cats have developed a mechanic where the teeth are just very round and robust, so they can actually grip things. Not too many people know that most biting cats, specifically lion prides, kill their prey by asphyxiation. So what they do is they go for a kill bite, where they go for the esophagus or they go for the nose, and they'll actually asphyxiate the animal that's larger than them. And then when the animal's finally asphyxiated, then they start feeding on it. So that's how the bite development, at least for current day cats, is like. With Smilodon, it's a whole different mechanic. So these teeth are obviously not biting teeth because they are very slender, but they're also very wide. So a lot of the stress is for direct pressure versus any sideways pressure. That's where they're more prone to break. And we do find teeth that are broken off in the tar pits for just very old saber cats. So a lot of these skulls get crushed just from bones stacking onto each other. So that's just the nature of the tar pits. But we do find individuals that are very old with very cracked teeth. I should note that even a saber cat with a tooth cracked right about here, it's still maybe 50% longer than your average biting cat. So the way saber cats are theorized to have hunted is they would grip their prey because they're about the size of lions and tigers on average, contemporary lions and tigers, but they're more robust. Their forearms are really beefy. So what this means is this was a cat that was meant to grip its prey, and then they actually had very slender necks. Funny enough, they had very longer necks in comparison. Yeah, in comparison to other big cats. When I started drawing skeletals, I was just tripping out. Like I never noticed how long the necks of these cats were, and the reason for that is the cat would swing its head up, and then with these teeth puncture down, and then release. So it's a very almost like horror movie version of asphyxiation. instead of suffocating the animal bleeds to death. Wow. So what's theorized is the cats would tackle the animal, stab it repeatedly, however many times they could do it safely for their own, and then possibly even back off and then watch the animal just bleed to death. Wow. So it's definitely the horror movie contemporary of big cats in the prehistoric. It was the slasher, if not the Jason Voorhees of the cat era of the Ice Age.
Wow. That's great.
I have a question in this case. If based on what you said, where does that put it in terms of preferred prey items in its environment?
It's tough to know what.
Froze again.
Yeah, he's frozen again. No worries, he'll be back shortly.
It's tough. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back now. Yeah, it's tough to tell. Sorry, and then it's just.
Yeah, you're good now.
Yeah, you're good.
It's time travel, guys. The space time continues breaking around.
So, 40 parts all over the place.
Yeah, they got jumping through time, man. But these cats, it's tough because they're not meant for. These teeth aren't meant for going through bone. These are meant through going through soft organs and tissues. So versus like, not to bring it back to theropods, but you have Triceratops bones that have teeth serrations that can be matched up to T-Rex teeth. You don't get the same thing for saber cats because these teeth weren't meant for stabbing. What you do get is these streaked marks from these teeth right here. These are actually the shearing teeth. So once the animal's dead on most big cats, even lions and tigers, they use their shearing teeth to actually shear the meat off of the prey item. So you do have these scraping marks that you do find on some animals. For saber cats, it feels like a lot of their primary diet would probably be paleo bison, so the antique bison or latifrons, which was around. Camel would be up for the diet. Horse, there were a lot of horse around this time. So, and then another paleo friend of us.
Froze again.
Of our paper tips just recently.
Yeah, he's lagging a little bit. Yeah, give it a few seconds. We're good. Give it a few seconds.
Okay, cool.
All right.
I'm trying to see if. Okay, let me see here.
Oh no. Oh yes.
Oh, yes.
Try to connect to.
Could it be the video that's doing it? Maybe.
It could be as well, because these days, obviously for a variety of reasons that I do not like to bring up on the channel, but it might just be to do with the fact that the internet has just been extra overloaded with everything and everybody going on and doing stuff. And but yeah, I mean, once he's done with the skulls and stuff like that, we can maybe see if we can just all switch to the icons instead, so it might potentially prevent from lagging. But this is the best we can do. Any other program would be lagging all the same. It wouldn't make any difference. Josh, you still here, or are you lost for now? I just can't say. Oh, maybe he's typing something on Facebook. Let me see. But yeah, what are your thoughts so far about the skull? This is, by the way, I think it's a Fatalis. Yeah, he dropped a little bit. So
yeah. Oh, it's amazing. It's interesting to see. So this is something I didn't realize, but I guess should have made sense all along, is that all the teeth have an extra basically cavity in the actual bone where the teeth grew from, and you see that strange shape that the skull takes because of those giant canines. Well, I'm not sure they're canines necessarily, but basically the giant fangs protruding, and you actually see that kind of backwards imposed in the skull. So, and yeah, it was fascinating hearing, exactly the explanation for why, addressing the structural properties of the tooth and how it actually affects the animal. And I didn't realize that it would actually, do more, one-off or a couple of strikes and then leave the prey, because that's more like something a reptile would do. So that's true. I already learned something. So this is great.
And good news, he's back. So let's bring him back in. Well, we can see the name. We can see there is a window.
Yes, there's a name.
But I think it's just on his side that is lagging. Because I noticed that he got dropped, but we're still kind of good for some reason. Josh, can you hear us? Wait. Let me try to remove and add again. Yeah. No, nothing's happening. Oh, now he got dropped again.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely his side of the connection that's lagging.
Yeah.
This is very interesting that we are, I was expecting that it's going to be, well, never mind, it's all good.
Finally, we get to
We're going to keep trying until he manages to get in, so we should be okay. Once he gets in and once he kind of concludes whatever he was saying, maybe he will show you another piece, because I think he has another piece, but if he can, then after that, we'll just turn to icons, and hopefully that will give us a bit more fix it, reliably, because partially that's one of the reasons why I went here, because there's nothing I've got to show anyway. I mean, I did my part on Indiegogo campaigns, which, by the way, guys, you should totally check out. And we're just gonna try and see. Right, he's come back.
Excellent.
See. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, he's back.
Welcome back.
Right. No problem. We were still going anyway, so it didn't crash altogether. It just, for some reason, it dropped you. But
cool.
Bad internet. Not cool dropping one of my dukes, because Josh has been granted the title of Duke, by the way, in case you don't know. So,
I've yet to abuse those powers. I restarted my router, so hopefully that does something on my end. So hopefully I could stay connected now.
Yeah, we were talking about basically how it would pretty much go into stabbing, and Harry commented while you were away for a bit that it's very similar, you said, to some reptiles, right? That's what you were saying somewhere?
Because usually, like, all the big predatory mammals I can think of, they are pretty much constantly hands-on until the prey is dead, but a lot of reptiles like Komodo dragons, they, and snakes, obviously, and venomous ones, they usually just inflict the injury and just let it do its work and just patiently wait. So that's an interesting overlap that I never knew about.
Yeah, no, you actually bring up a good point with specifically with Komodo dragons, because I think we talked a little bit about Komodos over the Christmas live stream, and I noted their hunting behavior is they bite large water buffalo, which are much larger than the animal, and they just let them bleed out. They just bite them, inflict a very horrendous wound, and then just stalk them. With Sabre Cats, because there's no venom involved, obviously, so they just went a more direct route with these teeth. Their inflictions were more intermediate. Like they were pretty much, like, I dare say even juvenile or very young mammoth could have fallen prey to a Smilodon. Because you stab these large animals, they're 50 times bigger than the animal itself. But if they're hunting impacts and social behavior, which I think is where I left off, Jason noted that there was a new paper that dropped that supported more pack behavior for saber cats.
Wow.
So if you have a pack of these stabbing a juvenile mammoth or a mastodon, that'll do the job. Like, they don't even have to take the animal down. They just got to grip onto it, stab it in a very vital organ, and then just back off and then just stalk the animal while it bleeds out on the game trail. So these were very efficient but very horrific hunters in terms of their means of hunting, per se, which is probably why they were so successful. I think most people agree that the reason why they died out was they probably were feeding on larger megafauna. And when those megafauna disappeared after the end of the Ice Age, these animals probably did hunt other animals besides mammoth. But there's a theory going that the more mammoth or just pachyderm centered animals didn't do so well once the pachyderms kind of narrowed down to our current day pachyderm species. And the biting cats were more successful because they were just better at what they did. They were able to hunt and coordinate better with bison, horse, camels, which are all still around. So that's one of the main going theories, or they more or less navigated back into Asia or Africa using the ice shelf, and the big cats, the biting cats, just outperformed the saber cats because food was just getting more scarce.
Wow.
Yeah, with these Smilodons, it's basically, imagine even being a big guy, for example, if you were like 2 meters or like 6+, whatever, 6.5 feet tall. Imagine getting stabbed by 20 knives, basically, one after another. That's pretty much what it would be.
Yeah, I mean, imagine getting bit once. Like this guy, if he bit me in the choroidal artery or like under the sternum, like I'm dead.
Yeah, it's game over. Yeah,
like there's no stalking that
game over. That's literally instant kill.
Yeah, but I mean, but this harkens back to your question, Harry, about like, does the stress of the tooth invalidate it as an effective predator? And that's not really the question. The question is, what makes the tool an effective kill tool? And we've learned with Smilodon, it was its hunting techniques that it chose to adapt that made these tools effective hunting tools in terms of using them correctly. When I was working in the effects studios, we worked at the shop, and we had a saying that like there's one perfect tool for the job and there's 50 wrong tools for the same job. So like with Smilodon, it's just they found the one perfect tool for their job. And that was probably their demise. Like we know that animals that are very hyper adaptive to a specific niche, when an extinction event occurs, they're usually the animals that first go out because they're not so adaptive.
The other thing I was curious, would that by any chance be similar with other groups like Barbophilidae, for example, like, you know, those Barbophilis, which is quite a diverse taxon as it is. It's got lots of species, but they have similar kind of adaptations. Would that mean that they would basically use the same technique?
Yeah, they have it's so weird. Like there's many different cats that aren't related to saber cats that adapted the same technique. Even with current day cats, like we have wild cats. We're actually finding there's a lot of feral cats. They're actually adapting hyper extended canines. There's even a whole breed of cats called vampire cats. If you want an adorable thing to look up on Google, look up vampire cats. And we're seeing that these cats are developing hyperextended teeth. Now, we don't think it's because they're adapting the same hunting methods as saber cats or even scimitar-toothed cats, but it means that hypercaninism is something that is genetically inherent. Yeah, see, there you go.
Wow.
This chat just became adorable. But the theory goes that these cats are developing these very hyper long teeth because it's usually common in feral cats, and it's usually because they're just more quick to adapt to hunting things like mice or gophers or lemmings. Something about the extension of those canines makes it easier for them to catch those very quick prey items. Which we believe is how saber teeth kind of first developed. I think one of the earliest cases of saber toothism is Nimravids, which are local to North America, and I think the Horseshoe Formation. I forget the specific formation, but we have Nimravids, and they're very tiny. They're very small. I think that the largest they got were maybe the size of like a small cougar or a bobcat, but they are a completely different family that came way before saber cats proper that had already developed hyper canines with these saber teeth.
Wow. And if anyone's wondering about the word saber-toothed tiger and why a lot of people don't like it, it's because saber teeth have evolved in so many different animals, including felids or felid forms, I guess, and aren't remotely related, and they didn't even have a common ancestor that had saber teeth. They just evolved them separately, and that's why. And of course, Macroidids a lot of them didn't have saber fangs themselves, so I'm pretty sure. Like some of them just had kind of closer to normal length teeth. So
I think
that's-
Macaroides is actually a sister family to the felids, if I'm correct. I don't think they are in any way part. So basically, Smilodons and all of those family closely related members would be Macaroides, and they would be a sister group or close to a sister group of somehow, because I don't remember all of the phylogenetic parts of it, but it would be basically a different family even from the Felidae. So
wow.
Yeah, not only that, but just within mammals, because one of the theories about why mammals were so capable of taking over the world after the death of the dinosaurs was because they were just so adaptable. And not only were they so adaptable, there's a meme where it's like, can I copy your homework? And it's like, yeah, sure, just change it up a little so they know you didn't copy it. Mammals were awesome at that. Sorry, I had to spit there. We have mammals across the board. Real life, guys. What am I going to say? But we have mammals across the board that adapted hunting techniques or feeding techniques or swimming techniques from other mammals, whole other families, even other whole other clades of creature. Bats developed flight techniques that are similar to pterosaurs in terms of membrane wings. Whales developed swimming in terms of fins, just like marine reptiles or even some fish. Even in the case with saber teeth, we have an animal called Thyleko Smilis, which is a marsupial, and it adapted. It almost carbon copied this hunting form. I have a book real fast. Let me see, because I'm a book guy. Let me see here. So, Thyleko Smilis. This is Thyleko Smilis. Let's see if you can see that. And you can see how similar that plant is. Like they had developed the saber tooth stab and run away technique just as effectively as an actual saber tooth. I don't know if I could do this side by side, but yeah, you can see it's almost a carbon copy of this hunting technique, this schematic for how to hunt for prey, and it's almost like verbatim for Thyleko Smilis right here.
That's nice. Actually, apparently, and I heard this recently, there are actually some kangaroos that evolved to have fangs that were probably predatory, like actual canine-like.
I've heard
fangs.
It's fascinating, and because of what marsupials do, I wouldn't put it past them because they're so weird. Like the platypus. Come on. So, like marsupials are so. I'd say it's so weird. I'd say if like mammals were classified as artists, like you have your classical mammals, you have the classical arts, the Renaissance era with carnivoria, and then you got mammals, and they're more like the Pablo Picasso. They're very experimental with like everything they do, like like from giving birth to adaptations for water. I think the platypus and maybe maybe only the shrew, but the platypus is like one of the few mammals that adapted both egg laying and venom. So it's like marsupials in general are just like they're just so unique that they're so prone to do just experimentation. And I did see that, and part of the reason, like part of what associates a mammal with carnivorous tendencies is they go by, if I try to do a side view, so they go by the zygomatic arch right here, and how that goes into right here with the crest line, where these are where the jaw muscles connect. So on most carnivores, these are very wide because the jaw muscles they need, and this is an animal with actually a very weak jaw bite because these are where the muscles will nestle into and attach. That's what that notch is. So that goes through this hole and anchors to the top of the skull. So that's all muscle right there. And what they're finding is they're finding other mammals, not only kangaroos, but even some ground sloth in South America with these very wide processes where they're kind of second guessing, why would these animals need such a strong bite? Like why are they developing these hyper strong bites? And one of the theories they're defaulting to is they're just carnivorous for some reason, or maybe even omnivorous. In the case of bears are actually omnivorous. So kangaroos, we do know, are very angry animals. I've read many stories of kangaroos that have straight up, like, you just don't mess with kangaroos on average, because they actually have claws that they can reach out and grab you. And then I've heard, like, their kick can lacerate the torso of a man if it's enough power. So you see all of that. And maybe in prehistoric Australia, food was just as scarce as it was, like, in modern day deserts, that kangaroos might have developed a sense of opportunistic tendencies, just like pigs. Pigs are omnivorous, but they're foragers, but they will eat anything if given the opportunity. Kangaroos might have been developing the same thing, where it's just like, from fighting off whatever animals they needed to, if resources are rare, there's an available nutrient in the sense of, like, an animal kill that they're not doing. And these roos just started developing these hyper extensive jaw muscles to kind of start tearing into soft tissues, mainly just because it was an opportunistic sense. Like, it's not that they were actively predators, but this might have been the road that they were starting on to become predatory, if evolution had allowed it to happen. I don't think we have a full case of, like, an exclusive predatory kangaroo, but I have seen it floated out there a lot.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's actually two potentially predatory kangaroos. One with the fangs is a fangaroo, and the other one, I forgot what it's called, but it's a type of tree kangaroo, and it's in sizes just grew really, really long. And it's interesting is in the sense that it's amazing that's still possible, because with most diprotodonts, which is like kangaroos and all that, their canines have almost completely vanished. So the fangaroo managed to just reverse that trend and start regrowing them, while the other ones, they just had to make do with different anatomical architecture.
Yeah, no, and we have more than one case of this, like in the sense of water deer are reared, but they've redeveloped their fangs. Now we know those fangs are purely for display, but you do got to second guess it, like, what led to the development of fang structures. So with herbivores, we do have to be more cautious with how we associate fang structures. But like I said, with marsupials, I'm more open to just kind of giving them carte blanche, because marsupials to this day show how adaptive they can be, and how opportunistic they can be, and how much they're willing to break the rules. So yeah, like the fangaroo, which is a great name. I've never heard of that, but now I'm going to use it anytime I'm asked about it. The potential's honestly skyrockets as far as, like, what the fangaroo was capable of, what these tree-dwelling kangaroo species were capable of. Who knows? Thyleko Smilis is a weird animal. It might have been a herbivore for all we know, and it just developed these fangs. Same thing for Thylacine. It's more or less agreed to be a predatory animal. It wouldn't surprise me if we went back in time and the thing ended up eating nuts. Like, marsupials are just weird, man. Like, they're amazing. I love them, but they break all the rules.
Yeah, and the case of
our last airbender took it to the next level. They made a platypus bear.
Oh yeah. Well, that's straightforward. You just get a platypus and make it bigger.
Just make it bigger, and make it walk on two legs as well sometimes.
Yeah. Oh, if they had pretty big claws, they could easily be a bear. It's just they don't have teeth. They're just the duck bill.
Or a rabbit roo.
Yeah, a rabbit roo.
It's like a kangaroo, but with the rabbit, the, like, bunny middle, two teeth, incisors, or what do you call them?
Yeah. I will say I have a few more skulls I can bring out real fast.
Do it.
Where did I put them? Okay, so I have a Tasmanian Tiger. So this is a Thylacine.
Oh yeah, nice.
And you can see how I mentioned, like, they copy their homework from other mammals, and they have no shame about it. Because Arson, if you want to bring up the photo of me with the dire wolf, you can see the skull comparison side by side. But you can see, like, the Thylacine adapted the canine schematic almost verbatim. Shy of the unique features that make it a marsupial, it was pretty much the wolf of the of both the Australian and the Tasmanian. Yeah, so you can see the skull is almost like verbatim. I could even probably get that angle. It's like, it's almost like a carbon copy. You know? Like,
and that's what you look like when you freeze on screen as well.
Nice. Well, I mean, I hope I look as charming every time I'm just like,
hi, kisses.
But you can see, if you want to go back to the main screen, the Thylacine.
Give me a second.
It has, just like I showed with the Sabre Cats. So this is more characteristic of a predatory mammal. You have very wide, like, cheekbone structures. You have a very notable crest line for these jaw muscles to connect to. So all of this would be connected with jaw muscle. Even in the jaw itself, you usually have a very deep recess for where the jaw muscles are going to anchor up into. And then you have for the Thylacine, it's very unique because it actually has almost like shark teeth, which are a bunch of these carnassial teeth that are all very specific to prey items. Then I have a Tasmanian Devil skull, which is pretty cool. And I just got this last night too. So with the Tasmanian Devil skull, you almost have the same exact profile. In fact, the Tasmanian Devil, and this is a small Tasmanian Devil skull. I've actually seen them in person. They get a lot bigger than this. They're almost as wide as a Thylacine. Like, these things were just, they're made to just bite. That was their sole purpose in life. And not only do they have a wide, just as wide bone structure for those jaw muscles, the Tasmanian tiger and the Tasmanian Devil, the canines are almost the same length, if you can see that.
Oh, wow.
Which is, and this is a small Tasmanian tiger skull, mind you, and I mean a small Tasmanian Devil skull, and the canines are almost about the same size, which is just, it blew my mind when I started doing comparisons of the two skulls. And we have Tasmanian Devils that do have, they have canines that start to expose through the cheeks because they just grow so long. So, but it's this type of structure that leads people to believe that the Fangaroo or the Thylacine or animals like Thyleko Smilis might have been predatory in nature, because other than the obvious canines on Thyleko Smilis, Thylacine is a very unique animal, and just everything from the way its teeth is formed to the way its claws are formed. It was a tree-dwelling species. People credit it to being more like a jaguar of the Australian outback in the prehistoric times. So yeah, these are very unique structures, but this is what spearheads these theories that these other marsupial species might have been carnivorous.
Wow.
This is an adorable skull, by the way. Look how tiny this thing is.
Yeah.
I bet that thing would bite your finger off, though.
Yeah, they're pretty powerful.
Yeah, no, these animals are insane. Like, I was very surprised because this is a very small skull if you put it next to my head. But the Tasmanian Devils I've seen in person, their heads are huge. Like the head from this skull is maybe like this much bigger, that much fatter. They're pretty much like, the ones I've seen get almost as big as raccoons, North American raccoons. The North American raccoons can get pretty big, except it's all head. Tasmanian Devils are all head and just like robust little stumpy, like just very adorable but very angry animals. And then I've seen zookeepers cuddle with Tasmanian Devils, and they'll just sit there and start purring. They're so fascinating to me. They're very fascinating animals.
Yeah, I think they're probably synonymous with, I'd say, a badger or a very small wolverine. I think they've actually tried to, they now theorize that they can get rid of feral animals by trying to breed Tasmanian devils and just trying to repopulate them, because normally a lot of our marsupials are vulnerable to foxes and cats.
Yeah.
Apparently these ones might eat them instead. It's
Yeah, and not only that, but I think in Tasmania specifically, with the quoll and with the Tasmanian devil, they're starting to grow bigger, because when the Thylacine was hunted to extinction and the last one died out, and I think in a zoo in 1936, and then it was declared extinct in the 1980s. It took them that long to kind of officially declare them extinct. There's a huge niche that was left empty. That's the thing you got to see about nature. Nature always fills a niche that's left vacant from a previous species. So they're saying because the Thylacine is gone, quolls and Tasmanian devils are now growing bigger because they're filling that niche that the Thylacine used to fill.
Cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, there's lots of cool stuff about these things, man.
Oh, yeah.
So do you wanna go through other pictures that you have sent me, maybe some drawings or wherever else you want to take us?
Yeah, if you want to go back to, I did a sketch of the Sabre Cats, all their skulls and everything, and we can do this to kind of close out the Sabre Cats and transition into lions after that, lions and tigers.
So,
but
Sabre Cats sketch, right? Give me a second. Yeah, we found it.
Well-oiled machine these days.
That appears.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so you can see, and these are all tar pit specimens, and these are all things that are on display that you can go see in person. So here we have a canine replacement for a saber cat. Not too many people knew that saber cats, like all other felids, have what's known as milk teeth. So they're the teeth they're born with that they use to nurse. But they didn't lose their milk teeth till very long within the developmental process. And these are very notably large skulls. Like the smallest one is about the size of a bobcat, and you can see the adult teeth are actually starting to crown through the milk teeth of these saber cats. And this teeth replacement method is actually very similar to what we see with theropods and Tyrannosaurus, where the teeth is just sliding along the other tooth while the other tooth is getting loosened and then finally gone, and then the final teeth kind of just slides into place. So you can see that sliding and replacement method here on the Smilodon fatalis, and you can even see at one point these animals had 4 stabbing teeth or 3 stabbing teeth before they finally got rid of their milk teeth and got their adult teeth. So it's very unique to see the tooth replacement methods for the Smilodon fatalis, and this is one of the more unique exhibits I've seen at the tar pits. I haven't seen a canine replacement exhibit for any saber cat at any other museum except for the tar pits, and that's because their collections are so big. And then if you scroll down, you could see the muscle anchorment. So this is the jaw. Smilodons have one of the widest jaw opening mechanisms of almost any mammal. Even thylacines had a very wide, and I pretty much think they put thylacines to shame just because Smilodons had to open it that wide to fully expose their saber teeth. But you can see where the jaw muscles anchor on the bottom, and then how they go through the cheekbone and then up into the crest of the actual where the brain case is, right below, right in back of the orbital process. So you can see those ribbons are actually the muscle anchor points of where that would be anchoring in the animal.
It's amazing. It's interesting as well. I didn't realize that muscles could actually bend backwards in that way. I always thought, wow. Yeah,
muscles are very elastic. It's so, I mean, if anything, human yoga is a testament to the elasticity of a mammal. But yeah, I mean, if a muscle is stretched enough, or if you exercise it enough, it's capable of a lot of things. Muscles are very elastic, just structures. They're capable of a lot of things. With mammals, we definitely push that muscle elasticity, at least within our biting capabilities, to like a whole other degree. But mammals actually do have a lot of weird things they can do with their skulls. Just countless mammal skulls that you can cite that just do weird stuff with their with their muscles and their biting structures, or sonar, or any number of things that they do.
Yeah.
Awesome. And how long did it take to get this piece done?
Oh, these are in-person sketches. So these are sketches I would do just by sitting in the museum and sketching at them. On average, you could probably, I would probably try to bang out one of these in like 10 minutes. Because
Yep.
your arm just gets sore just holding the sketchbook and doing this all day.
Oh,
yeah. What I would do is I would sketch a display, relax, walk around the museum, find another exhibit that I'd find interesting, sketch that one, walk around, give my arm a rest. I was very infamous in the museum circuit at a certain point in the early 2000s.
Nice. You're one of the kind of people that stay in a museum all day?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah. 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 My girlfriend doesn't like that. She's like, I went to one exhibit with her and we went around. We probably spent about an hour and a bit or 2 hours. And afterwards, she's like, okay, great, Harry, that's good. Let's go. I'm like, but we have to go do it again. I have to see if there's anything I missed. And she's like, what? So, yeah, when I went to London a few years back to meet her, I purposely went a few days early, did a giant mad run of all the museums, and then I met up. So it was all perfectly orchestrated.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's okay when they take you through like endless times of shopping, like hours per day, without even giving you a lunch break. That's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, no. The way here's how completely different subject, but the dating advice for museum goers, if you want to label this as
I don't think it's very easy to mix, to be honest. It can be done, but sometimes it's just too difficult. I just go solo.
Well, it depends on the person too, but the way I do it is if there's an exhibit you are very interested in, I tell people 100% of the time, go on that exhibit on your own.
Yep.
Like, unless you're with a person that's very much into the same thing you are, it doesn't even have to be a date, just a mutual individual. Unless they're really into what you're into, if you want to really get the most out of that exhibit, just do it on your own, because you can set your own pace. You can draw whatever you want. You can take pictures of whatever you want, especially if it's a new exhibit, because what I'll do is I'll walk through the exhibit once, mentally note everything, and then I'll go back and hit areas that I'm like going through my notes, like, okay, this had an exhibit on this thing, so I'm going to go over there, and this had that thing, I'm going to go over there, which can drive a person crazy.
Yeah.
I go absolutely nuts in the museums. If I go to London Museums of Natural History, or if I go to our London's Wallace collection, both of the topics are my favorite, meaning obviously natural history, animals and stuff like that, and the weapons and armor of historical time periods, respectively. Yeah, I'll go absolutely nuts with that, and not many people can take it.
Yeah, and not only that, I've gone with people who are absolutely into what I'm into, and even after we do a round in the museums, I'll still break off. I'll be like, all right, guys, I'll meet you in 15, and I'll go run off and find something else that I saw, but I couldn't dwell on, and then I wanted to go back and get photos or references from it. So that's just what museum people do. I tend to see, like, they do a round of an exhibit, and then they kind of shoot off to areas they want to go. I'd say the second part is, if you are going to take a date on a museum, you got to understand the purpose of a date is to spend time with an individual. Yep. So the way I work it into a museum exhibit is I actually give them a personal tour. And what that does is that makes the exhibit more interactive for both of you, because I've done this with dates. I've taken dates on museums. And because I've been to these museums so many times, I actually treat them like I'm their personal guide. And that tends to bring them more into the exhibit, because if you walk across a rock and you're just looking at the rock and you walk away, it's a very two-dimensional experience. But if you walk across the rock and then you start talking with this person about, like, oh, this is a moon rock from the lunar landing, and, you know, this thing can burn up and X amount of hundreds of degrees, that strikes up a bed of conversation or repertoire that you can actually capture that person's fascination. They now no longer see that as a rock. They see that as a point of conversation. So I tell people,
Nice.
if you want to get the most out of a museum day, definitely go through and just kind of treat it like a personal tour. Or even the opposite. They might know more about an object than you are, and you can just sit there and let them talk to you about it. And it's part of the conversation process. That's what's the most important about a museum date.
I remember when I was on one of those dates, I just jumped straight into mating strategies.
Yeah, that's an option too, man. That's an option too.
I just like, hey, this dinosaur would have really had a weird time. And she's like, oh yeah, for real. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, museums are great, and some people are just really into it, and it's really helpful it's helpful in a way that it just helps you spend better time. But you're correct, 100%. It always helps for somebody who is not into it. You can kind of get them into the subject a bit more, or at least share with them what it is about the subject itself that you find so interesting, so they can see how you are being passionate about it, and that you're not just there to just show off or whatever. You are actually truly knowledgeable about the topic that you like, and they kind of get to know a bit of a part of you as well, which is a good idea too. So it's not like you're talking about yourself, so you're not selling yourself, you're just basically telling her certain stories in the museum, while that tells her a lot about yourself and how much you know.
I should have thought of that.
Hey, free tips, man.
Free tips.
All right. To swing back to
from His Grace, Josh.
Oh, what happened?
No. I was saying free tips from His Grace, Josh, because you're a duke. So as a duke, I have to address you as Your Grace.
Oh, nice. But,
okay, guys. Sorry, feel free to carry on. I just need to step out for 2 minutes, literally. I'll be right back.
Okay, cool. No worries.
All right, cool.
So Harry,
Yes.
To kind of transfer into lions. So one of the things I noticed, because I watched your interview, and I do advise people watch that interview. Arson, I'm sure, will plug it in the description. I think it's the first interview he released where he talked about megafauna. So I wanted to do an in-person comparison because there's questions about how big did Sabre Cats get. So we have our Smilodon fatalis. This is an average size Smilodon fatalis. Right here.
Yep.
So sadly, the skull doesn't come apart from the jaw, but I also have the skull of a lion. So this is an African lion. Right here.
Wow.
Let me see here. So this is a very, if you could believe it, this is an average size lion. This is how this is their comparison to my head. So this is an average size lion and an average size saber cat. And you can see if I rotate these down, how much wider the zygotes are on these animals versus on the Smilodon, because these are the biting cats and these are the stabbing cats, and this is how big they are side by side. So the average size of a lion skull is, give or take, I want to say like 16 inches. Not 16 inches. It's like 13 and a half to 14 inches. So that's the average size of a lion skull. And that's roughly about the same size of your average saber cat. So your fatalis populator is now the king of the largest saber cats due to a more recent find. But fatalis and populator, as far as Smilodons, were going neck and neck as far as who's the largest. And even then, we have, I believe there's a larger Smilodon that was discovered in the tar pits from what's known as Project 23.
Wow.
And his name is Conan, and there's no paper yet on how big Conan is, but they are saying it is larger than the average fatalis because this right here is this is, I believe, one of the more like better preserved specimens of fatalis from the tar pits right here. So Conan is supposedly larger than this guy.
Wow.
But even for a lion skull, even this guy, which I believe I measured him out at, give or take, 13 and a half to 14 inches. These cats, both lions and tigers, I believe they can grow up to a size of, I think the largest recorded was give or take 16 inches. So
Nice.
cats can grow bigger. Siberian tigers, for most part, because you noted Siberian tigers. Siberian tigers and some breeds of lion can get huge. In fact, the largest. Yeah. I have my cliff notes here. Let me see if I can bring them up. I believe the largest lion skull or the largest tiger skull was 16.3 inches. I'm talking empirical measurement. I'm sorry. But
I do know inches, don't worry. I do know inches.
Cool.
It's something I feel it's important. Inches and feet are important to learn.
Yeah, and not only that, but like I usually go into centimeters, but for some reason these papers go into millimeters, which drive me crazy. But to convert it, it's 413 millimeters converts to 16.3 inches. So that's the largest tiger skull recorded, and that's from a book called "The Wild Cats of the World" from Chicago University, which was published in 2002. And they note that Siberian tigers can grow longer than lions, but lions tend to have a larger skull length. The largest lion skull recorded is 16.5 inches, which is 419 millimeters. So you're talking about fractions of an inch at this point, where they're both roughly the same size, but they can grow huge. Like 16 inches is huge.
That's about this amount, I think.
Here for you. That's an extinct tiger from Asia, which is apparently the biggest from the Panthera tigris genus.
Yeah. So is that the Caspian tiger?
No, it's I'll zoom in and I'll tell you what it is.
Yandong, I think.
Yandong, yeah, Gandong tiger, yeah.
Yeah, it's So this, I think, lived in Southeast Asia, like probably Sunda, the old Sunda subcontinent. I'm guessing it's not sure exactly where, but it was actually a tropical tiger, and it was, I think, around during, I guess, the Ice Age, maybe. I'm not quite sure what the time is.
It's placed to see 195k years ago, but at least based on this website, which, as we know, to credit to Roman doing once again great artwork, but we don't know in terms of the info. You have to still check everything with all due respect.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I always like to cite my sources because it's like, I mean, anybody can throw numbers, and there's a lot. And the one thing I did notice that when I was doing this research, there's a lot of numbers that get thrown out there. So I try to get citations or direct citations from paleontologists about, like, okay, where did these measurements come from? Where did those measurements come from? So on and so forth. I will say that there is the larger species of, like, the largest saber cat skull that we know of is Smilodon populator. And that is from a paper, I think it's Sierra et al. 2020. The title is An Extremely Large Saber-Toothed Cat Skull from Uruguay. So this is a find from last year. And the skull length of S. populator is 15 inches. So 15 inches is the current record for the largest saber cat, and that belongs to Smilodon populator, 15 inches. It doesn't sound like a lot until you start scaling it overall length, and then you start getting larger proportions.
I just got a ruler in front of me with tape, and I just extended it, and it's definitely big.
Yeah. Like it's again, it's give or take 1.5 to 2 inches larger than this guy. This guy's huge. It's about the size of your average lion, which is this guy over here. And to give you a size estimate as far as like how big these are, actually, I have the skull of a black bear to do a comparison. So we can do a bear just to Fatalis comparison, because we had black bears in the tar pits. We had a lot of bears, actually. And
Tar Pit is like a whole collection of stuff that's been around, which was so interesting and insane as well.
yeah, so this is the skull of a black bear. It's a juvenile black bear. Black bears, they get a little bit bigger, maybe like this much bigger on average. But even at this size, you can do, I'm banging my laptop. You can do just the overall size of like your black bear from your Fatalis. Like the skull length on these is absolutely insane. And this is actual bear skull here too. So, and the reason why we know it's a juvenile, not a juvenile, but a subadult, because it has all of its sutures fused, which is very indicative of an adult individual. So most of these sutures are completely fused, but it has some of its premolars, if you want to look in there. So those tiny teeth right behind the canines, those are premolars. So those are usually teeth that they lose once they get into adulthood. This one has all of its premolars behind its canines, which are these little tiny baby teeth. So this is one of my more prized black bear skulls that I got from my collections long ago. There's like a little catalog number down there. So
Wow.
but it shows you the size of these animals in comparison with each other.
Yeah. So
okay, sorry, Harry, go ahead first.
Oh, you go first.
I was going to ask if you want to bring up another picture so we can, while we talk, so we can just look at something as well. Oh, there's this as well. Oh, that's a lion, isn't it?
Yeah. We jumped into lions when he ran off.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'll bring it up. I think I've got. Okay, so I'll open this up and you can tell me which one it is. I think it is a lion, but I'm not 100% sure.
All right.
Josh, is that a lion?
Yeah, so that's our American lion. That's currently Panthera atrox, formerly Felis atrox. So, and that whole the renaming of it is a whole journey. But to summarize, Panthera atrox, the American lion, shares a lineage with Panthera Smilis, which is the cave lion. So, American lions are formerly ancestors of cave lions. So and that's from a mitochondrial DNA analysis that they did of a American lion DNA that they found in a cave preserved, and cave lion DNA that they also found in caves preserved in Europe. So they finally were able to do a DNA analysis, and they found that instead of being related to a giant jaguar, American lions are actually belonging to cave lions as far as their direct relatives. So that's the consensus. That's DNA. We got it. We know they're lions.
Yep.
So is the American lion older than the cave lion, basically?
No, actually. No, the cave lions are actually older than American lions. The theory is the cave lion came across the ice shelf that connected what is Alaska to the current day Russia.
Right.
So that glacier shelf, they came over and migrated, probably following mammoth or woolly rhino. And then as they got further south, they went from a more shorter, stockier species to these animals with very long limbs. And they actually just blew up in size as far as the American lion. So the American lion is younger, but it is definitely an ancestor of the cave lion.
Wow. And it's interesting as well is that I think that same study mentioned the modern lions, and it looks like the modern lions are the closest relatives of both of those animals. So it could basically be argued that what we understand as lions are actually just a subgroup of a larger family that are, justifiably called lions as well. That just didn't happen to have manes.
Yeah, and it's so funny because people think that a lion needs to have a mane to be a lion. That's absolutely not true. It's so weird. We have the Salvo Lions, so the famous lions from Ghost in the Darkness. If you guys ever watched that movie with Val Kilmer and Kurt Douglas, which is about the two lions that terrorized a a colonial British group that was building a bridge in Africa, in Salvo. Salvo lions are maneless. Both males and females don't have manes. And then there's a study about other lion populations where the females are actually developing manes as well. So then you have you have lion species where both the male and the female do have manes. So the absence or presence of a mane doesn't really define a lion. And we're learning, even with contemporary species, like it's not a rule. It's kind of just a thing they do, but it's not really a thing that they need as far as what they do.
I recall you mentioned that this drawing in particular is your favorite, and being so, also I presume that it accurately reconstructs the animal. And if true, which I believe it is, does that mean that this animal has proportionally longer legs than the modern day African lions?
Yeah, no, these animals I believe they're credited as one of the biggest felids ever. The largest American or Panthera atrox skull is 19 inches. So to give you an example of what that means, 19 inches is larger than the lion tiger hybrids that we have. Yeah, it's huge. Like if this is, let me see here. If this is my skull next to this 13-inch lion skull, give or take, I'm going to try to do some forced perspective. So if you want to shift back to my main camera, let me see here. So this is a regular lion skull, which is at 13 inches, right? So an American lion skull would be roughly this much bigger, and the size of a lion skull, which would be this much bigger right here. So that's a cat that has a skull that's nearly like they average American lions to be 25% larger than their contemporaries. So they're 25% larger than the Siberian tiger. They're saying they're probably 10% larger than the largest subspecies of tiger, which was the Caspian tiger, which went extinct, I think as early as the 1930s, and the Barbarian lion, which is another large lion species that went extinct in the 1980s, I believe. And the Barbarian lion and the Caspian tiger were roughly about the largest contemporary big cats you could get. They were about the size of like a liger or a tigon, which are these lion tiger hybrids. In fact, Arson, if you want to bring up a photo of Hercules, which is the current day largest cat in the world. So this is a lion tiger hybrid named Hercules. I think he's from Florida. So that's about the size of a Caspian tiger or a Barbarian lion. And even then, the American lion is noted to be even larger than this. like this is an insane predator. In fact, if you want to, did I send you the photo of the Barbarian lion, Arson? It was a black and white photo of a lion. I don't know if I sent you that.
I'm looking. I'm looking. If there is one, I don't know if you did. Wait a second. Is it? No, the one where you are staring up at it. That's probably the reconstruction of American lion. This one here, right?
No, that's a scimitar cat. Yeah,
scimitar cat. This one is a scimitar cat, right?
Yeah. So that's a scimitar cat. So that's the cousin or offshoot of the Smilodon fatalis. But you can see how big that cat is. It's about the size of like your mountain lion or even a small lion species. That's a smaller cousin of the American fatalis species. No, I didn't send it to you. It's a pity. Well, I'll dig it up later. But the Barbarian lion photo that they have on record, and even the Caspian tiger photos that exist, are roughly the same size as Hercules. And then, yeah, these were large cats that we, even to this day, we had very large cats. And they're noting that the reason why some captive bred, because all Barbarian lion lineages are captive, they're all extinct in the wild. and it's a breed that was in the Atlas Mountains or northern Africa, Egypt. It was also known as the Egyptian lion. They're all captive bred, and they're trying to do a captive breed species to preserve the breed of Barbary lion, so they can reintroduce them back into northern Africa. But these breeds are huge. They're huge lions that are even larger than some of their contemporaries in Africa. And it's the same thing with the tiger, the Caspian tiger. The reason why some Siberian tigers are larger than others is because they're saying the only surviving Caspian tiger DNA for the subspecies is alive in the Siberian tiger. And they're saying that the Caspian tiger and the Siberian tiger did crossbreed and had viable young that could breed. So now there's an ongoing study to research how much of the Caspian tiger DNA is alive in current day Siberian tigers in Russia.
Siberian tigers have now been they are being bred actively by some conservation programs established locally through the people who live in, imagine, Russia forests and all that, and there's like a hut, and there's a guy who wears a hat with a gun who feeds the wolves before he goes to sleep. That sort of guy, basically. And there is plenty of those guys who are actively participating in the programs to breed and repopulate the severely damaged population of Siberian tigers. And I've heard they're actually succeeding.
Yeah, that's the one thing. A lot of conservation efforts are doing really good jobs about preserving these extinct lineages of big cat. Because not too many people know, a lot of these tiger species from Europe and even these lion species were it's kind of like the same story of the Urox. The Urox was a giant ox that went extinct because of humans. Barbary tigers started going extinct around the Roman. I believe the theory is the Roman Colosseum fights, because the Romans would catch tigers and lions and use them in the games in the Colosseum. And they wanted the biggest of the breeds that were out there. So they would catch these large lion or large tiger species in Europe, or even down in, again, Alexander the Great conquered Egypt with Cleopatra. So they were in Egypt, and they would run into Barbary lions that they would just catch and bring them back up to Rome to do fights in the pits. So
Romans went to Africa a lot as well, and they had like lots of places during both Republic and the Empire. So there's absolutely no surprise if that's what you just said basically was true, and on multiple occasions and multiple time periods as well. So that's 100%.
Yeah, so I mean, the Barbary lion and the Caspian tiger species, I hope their breeding conservation efforts are working. I know they're taking it more serious now. So hopefully we can see those species reintroduced into the wild soon, or at least reclaim a fraction of their historical territory. Because it's species that went extinct recently, and they survived like the Roman Empire. And so it just always breaks my heart when I see these like amazing animals that we did have that were still alive that just went extinct for no reason. Like the most shallow of reasons. Mostly hunting. A lot of the Caspian tigers were hunted to extinction because of I believe it was a territory reclamation effort from the indigenous Russian people at the time during the 1930s. So they were just, it was very much on par with the Thylacine. They were just hunted to extinction. The Barbary lions were actually spared that because the sultans of Saudi Arabia or Morocco would actually have lions as pets in their palace. So part of the Barbary Lion Project is they were actually able to make a book of lineage to see which of these lions were a part of the royal family during these times in the 1800s, 1900s. And they've been able to trace back those lineage to captive bred lions. And now they're doing the DNA test to see if they do have true Barbary lion DNA. And now they're starting to breed those specific Barbary lions to make sure the Barbary lion stays intact. So it's extinct in the wild, but if it wasn't for captive breeding programs or the royal families just keeping them as pets in the palace, the Barbary lion would have been extinct as well. So we do have to thank those people too, because you have very, very two different dynamics. You have people that either keep them as pets and unknowingly save a species, or people that hunt them to extinction, and they're actively extinct in both the wild and captivity. So the Barbarian lion is more of a success project, and I'm glad that they were saved. The Caspian tiger has a chance of surviving close to the northern white rhino. So the northern white rhino, they're using the DNA of the last white northern rhino that died in, I think, 2017, 2018, and they're breeding that with white rhinos to try to at least preserve the northern white rhino subspecies through kind of like a shadow breed, if you will. So a specific breed of northern white rhino hybrid. So that's what the Caspian tiger breeding program is more about.
Yeah, the Caspian tiger, which I think you are correct about saying that their DNA may have partially, at least in a big part, in fact, may have survived through this breeding with the Siberian tigers. If you breed enough of them together, encourage them to mate, you will always have, just by chance of how they combine via genetics, basically, that there will be one that is purer Caspian than the other. Probably never 100%. I would probably say that's not possible at this point. But you never know in long term how it will work out. There may be all sorts of shenanigans that might potentially play out here. And I suspect what will happen is that, yes, we might indeed see more and more of these bigger sort of size tigers, especially in males, since obviously male tigers are bigger than the females, considerably, in fact. So, yeah, very interesting where it's going to end up. And good to know, as I said as well, they're succeeding right now in what they're doing now. So maybe next stage will be to focus more into, narrowing this down a little bit now that they have a sample already. So let's, if you're comfortable enough, shall we move on to the next piece to discuss on the agenda?
Sure.
Right. So what would you like me to bring up next, Josh?
I don't know, Harry. What do you want to talk about?
All right.
Well, I think in probably one big point of this, it matters the size and how big they grew relatively to each other. So I was sort of teasing that what's the biggest cat, and I'm gonna basically kind of ruin it and say they kind of seem to plateau at a similar-ish size. It's just that because they're proportionately different, it makes it harder to say. Because you even take panthers, for example. You get jaguars, leopards, lions, tigers. They are proportionately way different. You get, lions and leopards have much longer legs, slimmer bodies, and they usually have higher shoulder heights because of it. But tigers, are shorter and stockier, but they usually kind of achieve a similar weight. And jaguars, they're shorter and stockier still, but they have a lot of muscle mass. So, weighing them up, and then you get, the modern jaguar against the Augusta jaguar that had same shape but longer legs. So you get all these huge differences that make telling the size difficult. And then that means a lot of the, using the leg bones to predict size does have some problems. So it's harder to say what's the biggest. Then you get to Machairodonts and it just goes out the window because they have giant, humongous arms and tiny little but thick back legs and slimish bodies and slim long necks and shorter snouts. So it goes out the window. But I think all the times they've tried to predict the overall mass, they kind of just were kind of similar. I think that's as far as I could find.
No, yeah, you bring up a good point because even when we went over the lion versus tiger, tiger's head skewer bigger as far as what's been officially recorded. But wait, what did I say? Did I say tigers or lions? Yep. Lions heads skewer longer. Tiger bodies skewer longer than lions. So you do have technically the tiger is the largest because of just sheer length. But a lion will have a bigger head just because either it's a breed, if it's the Atlas lions that have these large heads. So you definitely have an issue of proportion. So with Smilodon, for example, I'll just bring up the skulls because it's fun to do it. So Fatalis is as large as your average lion or tiger, as we can see here. But Fatalis is actually not as long as your average lion. And not only because it has kind of a bobcat tail, but the body itself is actually, it's more robust, but it's also stockier and more compact. And we know this because this cat right here was a cat that was bred for tackling and stabbing, versus this cat was meant for biting and holding. And tackling and holding are two very different things. So even though we have a skull length that's equal for a lion and a tiger for a Smilodon, it's still not as long body-wise. Even though like it's more robust, the arms, the limbs are about the same, if not larger, than contemporary big cats. The way it was built was much more different than a lion or a tiger. Same for the American lion, though the American lion just kind of blows all the proportions out of the window. Even for cave lions, they're even saying that they found a cave lion skull that's as large as the largest Panthera atrox skull. And I tried to hunt down the paper. I couldn't find it, but I think I have the notes. Let me see. What was the paper? The paper was... No, that's mitochondrial DNA.
Wanted to share the image of this awesome skeletal mount, which is just it's an American lion, I think, and is it?
Yeah, that's my photo of the American lion. That's the big American lion mount at the tar pits. But the paper is Marcizak et al. 2014. The title of the paper is Largest Panthera Skull Reported, and they reported it at 484.7 millimeters, which is 19.8 inches. So again, the largest atrox skull is, give or take, 19 inches, as reported from the tar pits. But at the same time, it's hard to kind of like, I don't like to cite papers unless I can see what's on the paper. I haven't been able to find the paper, but that's floating out there somewhere. But even though you have a skull length, we know American lions are lankier, have longer limbs, and are just longer than cave lions. Cave lions have very shorter limbs because they dwelled in very crawled and compact spaces, versus when the American lion was out there, the American lion was just running on all fours. It was a plains animal. It hunted in the plains out in the open. It was running down species. So it was running down animals like bison, horse. It was camel, anything it could really tackle, even coyotes or even dire wolves for that matter. So this was a big, very long animal. So even though we have a skull size that's similar for two very different big cats, that doesn't really translate to proportion size, which is where you noted ulnar measurements only can go so far. And I tell people it's very problematic to measure isolated elements, because we have a mammoth named Zed at the tar pits. And Arson, if you want to bring up the photo of me standing next to the Columbian mammoth reconstruction at the tar pits. The Columbian mammoth is one of the largest mammoth species around. And the tar pit species was so large, they actually wanted to classify it as its own species. They wanted to classify it as the imperial mammoth because it's so much larger than the average Columbian mammoth. But even then, we have Zed that has isolated bones that are like 10%, 15% larger than the average La Brea breed of Columbian mammoth. But when they started articulating the bones together, even though everything was X amount bigger, the animal itself was actually shorter than what they had for the tallest Columbian mammoth. So isolated species don't actually hardly, rarely ever translate to overall body proportion measurements, which is why you got to be, unless you have a femur that's like ridiculously huge, where it's obvious that this thing was like 20% bigger. You have to play very, very carefully when you're doing, like, even with measuring big cat skulls, we only get differences of like 0.5 of a meter or an inch, or 0.6 of an inch, or 464 millimeters versus 468 millimeters. That translates to a very small percentile of measurements. So you do got to be very careful with those measurements.
Yeah,
And
it's like
mounted skeleton in the museum, is that also based on Zed specimen, or is that a different specimen?
No, the skeleton Zed hasn't been put on display properly. There's elements of Zed on display that you can see, but the mount that we have at the tar pits, that's a composite or a chimera mount, which is because of the nature of the tar pits, you don't really find articulated skeletons. You find like a grab bag of bones, all from individual animals. So what they do is, because they have so many bones, they can just composite together mounts and make a full articulated skeleton. So the skeletal mount at the tar pits is the average bone size for the Columbian mammoth that they then composited together to get the mount that you see at the tar pits.
Right. So the sculpture is basically a replica of what Zed would have looked like specifically, but the skeleton is a composite.
Yeah, the skeleton's a composite at the tar pits. The reconstruction isn't of Zed. I think the reconstruction, which was done by Blue Rhino, is just an average Columbian mammoth, like your average Columbian mammoth, give or take.
Pretty big.
No, it's big. It's huge. Like I'm at least 6 foot, and I'm like a mouse next to that thing.
So if you were elevated on the same platform where it stands, you would still be pretty small next to it. That's considering you're close to the camera as well.
Yeah, not only that, but I think there's like some forced perspective going on, so I might be closer to the camera than the actual reconstruction is, because the reconstruction's huge. When I gave my friend the camera to take a picture, they had trouble trying to frame the entire reconstruction. So, and because I'm just sitting there posing like a goof, I have no idea if I'm further back from a force perspective. So it's all kind of eyeballing it.
Oh yeah.
Once again, a brilliant piece by Blue Rhino Studios, because I love their mammals. Specifically, they're absolutely amazing. If you've seen any other stuff that they've done, I do advise to check them out. You can look them up on Instagram as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you want to show Harry the what they did with their short-faced bear, so they're Arctic Simis. That sculpture shows you how big this. I believe the short-faced bear was bar none the largest terrestrial mammal predator that ever existed. This thing is insane.
It potentially contests, or maybe second after its very close relative from South America, Homotherium, which may or may not have been larger, because it's probably quite hard to be a very spot on estimates. But I think they were very close.
That is so cool.
Yeah, there's nothing on this world that even compares to that. And that thing's from like Lord of the Rings.
Where they
There's a lot of ring troll, 100%.
Yeah, so I mean, it's I don't know about the South American. Again, it's one of those things where it might fall into the same quagmire that we got with the giant jaguar versus the American lion. Because bears, like big cats, have very similar bone structures, so you got to get down to the DNA. Because the claim for the longest time was the American lion was a giant jaguar. And then they did the DNA, and it was like, nope, it's the lion. So we might have the same case here, where we have a giant bear species in South America, but we know we have species from North America that were traveling into South America. So it's a point where it's like, was it just a short-faced bear that they found in South America, or was it a short-faced bear that traveled into South America and just kind of started becoming its own subspecies? We'll never know until we get enough material, and then even when we have enough material, it might come down to DNA, if we're lucky enough to find soft tissue preservation for both species to do a comparison.
Yeah, I don't actually know what material is out there, and if I recall correctly, it was not numerous at all. In fact, it was very, small, very subtle, and it's just based on what is shown, it's pretty big, but there is absolutely no guarantee that it might not just turn out to be the same as this, because it was definitely a short-faced bear. That's 100%. Yep. But whether it's the same short-faced bear or a different short-faced bear, that's what's the question. And it could just be the same one, but just bigger individual, maybe.
Well, there's also.
Go ahead, Harry.
And there's also the living short-faced bear, the spectacled bear that you could probably compare to as well. So that would actually be an interesting thing because, yeah, they're an actual short-faced bear in the sense that they actually have all the anatomical differences, and they're, I'm pretty sure, considered relatives sort of distant to these ones, but they actually have the same anatomy sort of compared to other bears that these ones have. Like they have the shorter faces, the sort of slinky limbs, and the kind of shorter, stockier bodies.
Yeah, and not only that, again, this is gonna derail us, but they're absolutely adorable. If you haven't seen a spectacled bear, they're like the most adorable of the bear species in North America. I believe they're in British Columbia mostly. Like they're in the evergreen forest in British Columbia is where they dwell.
Oh, wow.
But they look adorable.
I heard yeah. They look like Wookiees actually. So they have the sort of little patterned faces, and the rest of them's black. Yeah, there they are.
Yeah. So they're like raccoon bears, as weird as they are.
Yeah.
It's definitely a raccoon bear, 100%. You were right about that.
Yeah.
This one here, look at it. That's like a raccoon. Yeah. That's literally like raccoon on steroids.
That's right out of Endor, man. I swear.
The Ewok.
But no, if you want to show that picture of me holding the American lion skull, so this is from the tar pits. This is an actual American lion skull I was able to hold.
Let me find it.
To give you a comparison of the size of this bear, because we've established how big the American lion is. The short-faced bear, the largest short-faced bear skull I've seen in person, is give or take. Yeah, that's, and mind you, I have an actual lion skull here. If I were to hold it up to the same size, like, it's not too much bigger. Like, it's much smaller than what I'm holding right there. Because I basically held it like this, like, oh, look at this pose. But yeah, you can see how much larger that thing was. And that's not even the largest American lion skull that we have. Like, that's just one they had lying around that I grabbed real fast for a photo. And the short-faced bear skull I've seen, because I think the largest one I've seen in person is at the Natural History Museum. So that's the sister museum of the tar pits. And that thing is, give or take, 10% larger than what I'm holding right there. Like, it's not longer. It's probably about the same length as the American lion skull. But as we've seen with the Tasmanian Devil and the Tasmanian Tiger, these animals grew very big and very deep cheek recesses and the crest along the skull, because they were just building these massive jaw muscles. Like, that's why the short-faced bear is the short-faced bear. It was pretty much the bulldog of the bear species that developed at the time, and then it just became hyper carnivorous. It became a hyper predator. But it's like it's even with those proportions, it's still 10%, 15% larger than the skull that I'm holding right here, just chilling.
Oh, that is amazing.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool, neat picture. Was it heavy, by the way, to hold it?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, all bones are pretty much heavy. The tar pits bones can get heavy because they have a lot of asphalt that's kind of seeped into the bone. Right. So we try to give them asphalt baths, but you can never really get rid of all the asphalt that's kind of inside all the pores inside of the skull. So there's an added weight to it because tar is thicker than water, heavier. So you have these skulls that are just kind of indebted with all that extra sediment. But it wasn't so heavy that I was kind of like, it wasn't like a weight. It was heavier than the average skull that I've carried around or used for education purposes, but it wasn't like super heavy. It wasn't like I was deadlifting, you know, a dead weight or something like that.
And since you said that we frequently just plug in theropods, I just couldn't help but wanting to quickly show this.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
So that's with me with the cast copy of I don't know if his name's officially Wilson. I think that's PNSO that did that, but that's the American Museum of Natural History Rex right there. So that's the big notable Rex skull. That's the same Rex skull that I actually used for Jurassic Park.
Wow. So MH5027, I believe.
Yeah. So MHN, that's the one.
It's the one from the New York, which is where a lot of the more well-known specimens are housed. Both T-Rexes. There's a famous Allosaurus mount, which I used as an inspiration for my kit, which you should support on my Indiegogo campaign again. Cough, cough.
Yeah.
There's like tons of I think there's like quite a few ceratopsids. There's just tons of stuff. Like everything is just so much stuff. You should go there. Basically, that's my point. But where was this exactly? By the way, where was this picture taken?
This copy was at the ALF Museum of Natural History. So the ALF is a museum collection that's open to the public, but it's part of a larger university that's located here in Southern California. So if you're in Southern California, I recommend going to the ALF just because the ALF has a lot of past copies of very unique skulls that are out there. So they have a copy of Jane's skull. They have a copy of this skull. They have some Archaeotherium. They have a Perurosaurus skull, which is huge. It's definitely a museum that's worth visiting just because of their cast collections that they have. They actually have a bear dog, Amphicyon, one of the larger bear dogs. So they do have an Amphicyon. The thing is huge. I mean, even then, that's a good example. Like Amphicyon's skull is, I think, longer than the short-faced bears. But Amphicyon's not as big as a short-faced bear. So that also circles back around to the point that we were talking about, where skull size doesn't always equate body length or general proportion. And even then, Amphicyon, which is a bear dog, which had a very powerful bite, I still think even with the skull shape, it did not equate to the same bite strength as the short-faced bear, just because we're seeing so many radical adaptations with the short-faced bear, where it was compacting its muscles to kind of get denser muscle structures right here up in the cranium area. Like that thing was a beast unto itself. But having seen Amphicyon skulls in person and having seen our short-faced bear skulls in person, they're roughly around the same size as in terms of length, but that still doesn't dictate overall body size or proportion.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I'm actually really curious to see what it would have been like IRL, the what's it called, the short-faced bear, because like would it look like a bigger, basically, but meaner and stockier copy of the spectacle bear, or would it be like still completely different in terms of the coloration or whatever? I'm just really curious in that. How would they differ, if at all, other than just being beefed up versions of or smaller versions? Depends on the perspective you put them in.
Yeah, I mean, I will say as far as like coloration's kind of open to interpretation, because I think I sent you, Arson, a photo of American lion fur that was preserved.
You did, yeah.
So this was some of the soft tissue that was preserved. It's not all the soft tissue that's been preserved, but we do have fur that's been preserved, and we do have a cave art. Cave art, funny enough.
Nice.
So I believe that's American lion soft tissue preservation and fur. But we also have cave art that is some of the earliest examples of paleo art, or Paleolithic art, if you will, that show us how the coloration of some of these species were. So because of the cave paintings in France, we know how cave lions were colored, or their coloration. We have the same example of cave paintings where they depict American lions, and American lions kind of swing two different ways. Either they had lighter coloration like this with stripes along their arms and legs, or they were more reddish brown. From what we're seeing from cave paintings, that's kind of the general consensus, is these animals were more reddish brown in coloration versus being more, I believe cave lions were more this lighter coloration with grays, and they had this like black stripe that went across their face along the eyes. That's something we see in a lot of cave paintings that depict cave lions. So we do see, just because something's related, that doesn't mean that they can't defer coloration or coloration pattern. We see that just within Siberian tigers. Siberian tigers, they can go either orange or white. That's natural coloration that they kind of just figure out once they grow up. So coloration is definitely something that's up in the air. Again, we can't figure it out until we find soft tissue preservation. But we can guess. Definitely.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see. You know what else would be cool? If it was possible to find multiple different samples in a similar conditions, and that way to tell whether or not the coloration may have varied, and especially interesting if it varied in terms of the seasonal changes. Maybe after they do shedding and all that stuff, and then they regrow, perhaps to just change from summer to winter. So that would be a very interesting.
And you brought up a very important point. I don't think I gave you those photos. I don't think you have them on hand. No, I didn't give them to you. Damn it. But lions, funny enough, because lions have been in enough zoos around the world that I believe lions that are up in Nova Scotia or where it snows a lot, they actually start developing thicker fur. Because we know lions are savanna species. They're used to deserts and open plains, very different environments. But we're finding that lions that have been kept in captivity in colder environments, they actually start growing bigger manes, thicker fur, where they actually start looking larger than they really are, because we realize a lot of that's just fur.
Basically.
Yeah. So, and then if you even bring up, there's a picture of me with a wolf, Arson. I think I sent you. It's a white wolf. So you can see how much muscle and skin and fur can add to the general size of an animal when you look at this wolf that I work with. So that's I think that's a breed of Alaskan wolf that we did with we were doing kind of an educational thing. We work with a few wolf people here in the States, and that's a big head, but the skull of this animal is probably no bigger than the skull of the skeletal mount that you saw me with earlier. So it kind of shows you how much fur can do to give the illusion of a larger size of an animal versus an animal that has finer fur. They might look smaller to the eye, but what you're seeing is just kind of the optical illusion of fur or hair, and even something like having a mane can actually add. One of the things that they say why lions are developing manes is because it's more of an intimidation display, because we see it's not advantageous to hunting, because we have lions in Salvo that have developed no manes because they were disadvantageous to their hunting methods. They were getting snared on thickets and brush. So we believe that it's more of a display structure that lions are developing, but when you actually plug it into environment, the lions are developing longer manes because they're actually developing more fur to adapt to the cold. So there's a lot of different factors in work, as far as fur and how that translates to the perception of size versus true size for animals and other things like that.
And is the Alaskan wolf that you're here with part of the gray wolf taxon, the same taxon basically, just subspecies, or is it a completely different taxon if you're aware?
I'm a little gray on my wolves, pun totally intended. But I believe the Alaskan white wolves are just gray wolves that have adapted different fur coloration. So wolves or canids are known to adapt a wide range of fur colorations within their own breed. So we have gray wolves that are either all black, all white, or gray. We have red wolves that kind of follow the same pattern. So wolves are actually a really great example of how you can be the same breed or clade or taxon, but you don't necessarily have to have the same coloration across the board. And we see that with a lot of mammals.
Reptiles do that as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
We would find that sometimes if you put them in a different, like the rattlesnakes, they do that over time. If you put them in a different environment and if they adapt, they will gradually start shedding, and slowly they will transition to a different sort of pattern from where they were previously. And you could literally just like scatter them in different places and you will find that they're all going to look like completely different animals, even though they're the same animal.
Yeah, pretty much.
So I had a bit of a look in wolves as well, because I wanted to find out what exactly dingoes were, because I was hearing all this stuff about their different species. So it turns out that dogs, dingoes, and pretty much all the wolves of today, except for the maned wolf, which is like something way different. It's like just canid altogether. They're all members of the grey wolf family. There's I think some of them are categorized in their own subspecies, and some of them branch out below that. But yeah, I think the Alaskan wolves are a few different types, and they're all subspecies. Even though they're freakishly huge compared to any other wolf, they're just like, apparently wolves go down to 20 kilos, which is tiny. It's like, wouldn't that be coyote sized or jackal sized? But
yeah,
I don't know.
I've seen wolves that are smaller than the German Shepherd breeds that we have, having worked with wolf sanctuaries, and then I've seen wolves like the one you just saw, which are just stupid huge. I had a friend that wanted to meet a wolf. Her name is Janae. Shout out to Janae, and she has I think they're mastiffs. I believe they're mastiffs, which is a huge dog species.
Yeah, they're big. Yeah.
Yeah, and in her mind's eye, she said, like, oh, well, I have mastiffs, so they're not as big as wolves, or they're bigger than wolves, or they're as big as wolves. I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then the opportunity came where I told her, like, you want to meet a wolf? And her demeanor changed completely. I got multiple texts the night before, like, is it safe to be with the wolf? Will it bite off my face? Like her tough girl demeanor kind of just melted away when it became a reality. Like, you want to meet a wolf? Because you're going to meet a wolf. And when she met the wolf, her entire perception changed. She's like, yeah, these things are just huge. They're stupid huge. The one we had for show and tell, per se, for the educational program, I was an average size wolf. So that's not even the largest wolf we have on record. That's an average size just wolf. So, and
literally.
Yeah, and I had to explain that to her, like, these are just your average size wolves you're looking at. These aren't even the biggest ones we've seen on record up north. And she just kind of had she looks at her dogs in a whole different light. In fact, when she introduced me to her dogs, so they're service dogs, so they're meant to protect her. She was taken back how easily I was able to play with the wolves. I mean, not the wolves, the dogs. Because most people are very intimidated by like these mastiff species or larger dog species, and they're just like, when I approach a dog, I'm kind of very friendly no matter the size, and most people are just taken back, like, aren't you intimidated? And I'm like, no, man, I've worked with wolves. I worked with some pretty big predators. I worked with the tiger, I worked with wolves, I worked with venomous snakes. Your domestic dog breeds, though they are pretty impressive, do not scare me.
Kind of my story in reverse, actually. Throughout my life, I've met all these giant-sized dogs, just like ones that, really tall ones where they just lift their head and they can lick your face kind of dogs. And I was like, hey, dog. Because I like dogs. I pat them all the time, and they all start running towards me. In the local koala park, which is like a little tiny mini reserve, they have these tame dingoes. And, okay, compared to the ones in the desert that I've seen, they're these little tiny little things. These were big. They were, I'd say, German Shepherd, but more buff.
Yeah.
And there were some guy was taking them for a walk, and they saw me. They bowled through a whole crowd and just stuck their faces up and looked up at me. And I'm like, okay, sure, why not? Everyone was just... There's a whole crowd of people just shocked. The keepers were shocked, and I was like, okay, you get a turn.
Yeah, right.
So I think dogs always know. They know if someone's going to, be friendly, or if they know they're going to get a pat, they're going to go to you and expect the pat. It's great.
Yeah. No, most canines are very, they're very inquisitive species. They're very intuitive. They know who a person is almost right off the bat. So when they see me and they know I work with animals, a lot of them come up to me and start sniffing me because they're just curious what I've been around for the day. Like,
pick up certain smells as well, a lot easier that you might not know, even if you've washed it. But let's say if it's been maybe a couple of days after that you've done, they could smell that there is like a dog quote unquote smell on you from another, even if it's another species. They would still recognize that, oh, okay, this is interesting. He's a human, but he smells like a dog. What's going on, So we'll definitely try to investigate. And maybe this is another interesting point. They will investigate, and when they figure out that you are not a potential rival to challenge them, they'll just be relaxed. But while they're investigating, you notice that they're very active, and they kind of look like it's like they're searching for something to understand how they need to respond. And if they smelled, and if they decided for a second that you were a dog that was coming here to challenge him, then you would be pretty screwed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've the funniest because I live in LA, so we have a lot of people that get like the tough dog breeds. The bulldog, for example, it's a very misunderstood breed. The bulldogs are actually family bred dogs. They were bred as nursery dogs. So that's the history of the bulldog. It's a nursery dog. It was meant to be a breed that could be around your child during the Victorian era, I believe. And then people just kind of looked at the size of the skull and took it to a whole different level and bred these dogs as intimidating dogs, which they're not. Some of the most adorable dogs I've met have been bulldogs because they're just so friendly and they just want to make friends. They're very sociable dogs. So one of my neighbors has a bulldog that he tried to breed as an intimidation species, and this guy just left his gate open and the dog was just running around loose in we live in kind of a cul-de-sac area, and my family was afraid to go out there, and here's me pre-wolf Josh, so I just kind of like look out and I'm like, it's just a dog, and they're like, oh, but it's a bulldog and it's barking and it's angry, and I'm like, no. So I go out there and I just say, like, I'm not intimidating. I'm not yelling at it. I'm just kind of clapping my hands and being very friendly. And you can see the gears on this dog's brain just freeze. Because it's like, this was a dog that was used to being able to go out and bark and it kind of give a trigger mechanism for a person or an intruder to run. If a person runs, that's a trigger mechanism for most pursuit animals to give chase. And if you know this, that's why they tell you when you run into wild cougars or an animal, or even bears or any animal that is a chase predator, don't turn and run, because that activates something in their brain that they're going to give chase. So he's sitting here being very friendly to the dog, and the dog it was still barking, it was still not happy, but it started walking away because it's like, this person's acting completely different. He's not afraid. He looks like he's friendly. I think he wants to pet me. I don't know what to do. Back to his house. And then the neighbor came out, because again, he's one of those like tough guy neighbors, all show and whatnot, and he just kind of looked at the dog and he looked at me, and I'm out there in my like pajamas because this happened in the morning, and he just looked at me like, yeah, what's up, man? I'm like, yeah, your dog got out, I think you left the fence open. And he's like, oh, okay. Just walked. And I tell people, like, no, the dogs are trained to be like, to sniff out fear, but their brain sees as soon as you come at them as a friendly individual. They don't know what to do with that. But dogs are sociable animals, and if it's a captive dog species that's been bred to be a guard dog, they're used to being submissive to human beings. So when they see another human being that's not being intimidated but being very authoritative or even friendly, it crosses the wires. They don't know what to do with that. I'm not saying you should go try it, though, FYI.
Leave it to professionals.
Yeah, like, work with the wolf before you go try to pet the neighbor's bulldog. Maybe take those steps and try.
I get this, to bring it back to cats as well, I have oh my God, every time I visit anybody who has a cat at home, that cat always comes up to me, and then the rest of the evening they just hang around me all the time, following me, or occasionally try to play like they're trying to ambush me and see if I'm gonna notice and things like that. And on a New Year's, which was basically last year, so it was 2019 into 2020, when I was in a friend's house who were doing a New Year's thing, like an after party, and they had an Egyptian Sphinx, which is absolutely amazing. I love that cat so much. It's just, if I ever get a cat, I want an Egyptian Sphinx. And they're so funny, because they also have these funny looks on their faces, and because their eyes also look proportionally bigger because they don't have any fur. So, it was climbing everywhere. It was climbing on a TV set. It was trying to always climb in weird places, and then it would try to meow at me until I look at them, basically. It's like I would be sitting there like talking to them, and they would just be like meow, meow, meow. And then I look up, and then it just like comes down and gives me like multiple looks, then it disappears. And then it does the same thing again from a different place in the room, where I just look for ages to see where the meow is coming from. So speaking of, in case you didn't know, those who are watching, all the biggest cats today. So basically, the pantherines, basically the pantherina, they do not meow, and the feline, they meow. So basically, jaguars, lions, leopards, and what's the other one? Tigers. Those ones do not meow. Everything else alive today is meows. So even cougars meow.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yep, cougars have a very funny one. Cheetahs and cougars have a really amazing meows. I've seen them online. They're literally like, if you turn around, you would think that they're like just really big, oversized house cats, but then you remember it's a cougar.
Yeah, I will say, having worked with the big cat, and this is for a production, it's a whole different world. I am more comfortable working with wolves because dogs and people, you just kind of know where you stand with each other within like 5 minutes of meeting each other. Cats are like people, man. I tell, even domestic cats, they're like people. Either they love you, they hate you, or they're just skittish. They won't give you a reason why. It's just how they are.
They can also flip from one to another in a second as well. It's like one moment they love you, the next second they want to whack you in the face.
Yeah, no, like I've dealt with the tiger, and because I have cats. I think the last stream we did, my cat made a cameo. Because I deal with cats, and I think it was a Bengal tiger species that we were dealing with at the time. So that's roughly the size of this skull. So it was a cat that was this big. And because I knew what dictated how we were going to handle this cat, it was a whole different respect level, because these cats go from sitting completely complacent, no interest in you whatsoever, to like within the flash leaping at you. There was a story we had of production where we had an area enclosed off for the tiger that needed to be on set, but we had him in a safe, contained area to kind of. A big cat is like any cat. You give them a box and they go in the box and they're completely happy. So we made a box equivalent for this tiger. And the production manager was walking by and they were talking. They weren't mindful of how close they were to the enclosure where we kept the tiger. And within a second, this thing lunged out. It was enclosed, reached out with its paw, and just did a little like flick of the wrist, and it caught the guy's satchel that he had secured to his shoulder. Like it flung him, and the satchel went flying like 20 feet. And what happened was the cat just saw something dangling, and it was like, I'm gonna get you. So when it came within reach, it just went, and it just sent this thing flying. And the producer just stopped, walked away, and was like, I did not even realize what happened. Like, it happened before I even realized what happened. So enter me dealing with the tiger. So we had to put the tiger into the enclosure. It was something out of Jurassic Park. So we had I talked to the AD at the time, who was the person that was in charge of the production, and I told her I have experience working with, they call them ambassador animals. So they're wild animals that wildlife workers use to kind of introduce people into wildlife. So an owl that you would bring to a school, that's known as an ambassador animal. So I told them I worked with wolves, I worked with big predators. I can help with this tiger if you need to. Just let me know what I need to do. And we had a trainer that had brought the tiger. So I was selected as main company one, and what our job was to do was to put our hands on the cage, roll the cage onto set, and they were potentially just going to let the tiger loose inside the studio so it could sniff out the territory. So when it came time to shoot the scene, it was in a familiar space, versus if we just put him into the area cold and let him loose, nobody was going to know what was going to happen. So sure enough, all of us are standing next to the cage, and it was just like Jurassic Park. Like, some guy named Muldoon was there, like, okay, team one, hands on the cage, and all of our hands went on the cage. And like, team two, roll the cage into position. We're all rolling the cage in position. Like, it was the most surreal experience I ever had. And I was on pins and needles the entire time, because I know what these cats are capable of. And I'm like, it just takes a second to look away and not pay attention, and this cat can floor you. Like, not even do it purposely. Like, this cat's just playing with you as far as you know, but it just needs to be like, boop, and you're on your ass.
Yep. Yeah, and that's a bit of a danger thing with the cats and any cat, even small ones. They can like you and they will still attack you because that's their idea of fun. They will bite and claw and may even try and get a squeal out of you just because that's part of the game and that's what they like to do. So if it's a bigger cat, the risk goes up from that same mindset.
Yeah, that tiger probably just wanted to play with his satchel or whatever and didn't realize that the guy just literally shit his pants when he realized what was happening.
Like all he saw was something dangling, and he's like, "Ooh, that looks cool," and he just went for it.
Now imagine if this was an American lion as well.
Oh no! Then you would have a legit Jurassic Park moment where you just have like the guy hanging from the side, like help me. So it's like shoot her. That would be the moment where it goes up in flames.
That lion probably could like pack quite a punch, I would imagine, because their paws were massive because of their length of the legs as well. I think they were really good at just literally just going and smash, whack, whatever. Like they would probably, what I think they probably. I mean, big cats do it anyway, and I think even smaller cats do it as well. When they stand up on their rears against each other and they start basically like slamming each other into in the faces and shoulders. It's like the wrestling sort of grappling things they do with each other.
Yeah, 100%. That's the thing about the American lion. We talk about 25% larger. It's not just the length of the bones. It's the actual thickness of the bones too. These things were 25% thicker as well as longer than even the Caspian Tiger or the Barbarian lion species that we knew today.
It's basically, it doesn't even have to, draw out its claws to do anything to you specifically, as a human. It just has to literally slap you in the face hard enough, or like hit you in the temple or in the back of the head, and you just go knockout, KO, GG, bro.
Okay, here's the thing that like tigers, they love to chase and they love to pounce and they love to grab. Lions and big cats just like to grab and just like they do play biting. Here's where this doesn't work for a human being. So I actually have the bottom jaw, right? So let me put this into here. Okay, so this is our lion, right? So if this thing comes behind me with this much of a bite radius and just like does that, or comes around and just kind of playfully bites me across the shoulder right here, like that. Like, again, he's having fun. My choroidal artery is punctured. Like I'm going to bleed out from my heart all the blood. Fun for him, not fun for me. Like, that's how big cats have fun.
I am not. I am definitely not laughing.
Yeah, no, I'm bleeding to death. You're cool. So, yeah, that's an average size tiger or lion versus an American lion would they would swallow you and not even know it did it.
Yeah, you just be like, oh, where did he go? I want to play. So
yeah, right.
Is there any other point any of you guys wanted to bring up? How do you feel about the big cats?
Harry, I defer to you. Anything else?
Okay. Well, yeah, it's just I kind of find it fascinating because, and it's probably going to be the case with the big macroids as well, is you can see a case of evolution where you could tell they would have come from a very gracile, very small ancestor that was probably more of a foraging kind of lifestyle. And you just see, in many ways, doesn't even have to change that much. It has already a nice body to evolve into some very robust kind of macropredatory niche. And most of what it did was just grow bigger. And it's an interesting group of animals. I don't think there's been anything quite like them before, actually. They're kind of a totally new kind of thing that's just never quite been replicated, anything before it happened.
Notice another funny is that if you look at theropods, lineage overall, that they tend to, say for example, when Carcharodon, Allosaurids in general, let's just look at it this way, they leans towards a certain tendency of increased head sizes, smaller forelimbs, and just overall bigger, more robust bodies. And then they disappeared. Then Tyrannosaurus came around, and they were following the same trend. So in a way, they were kind of mimicking each other in that sense. And Abelisauroids as well, they were pretty much, mimicking in many ways what would a normal theropod be like, with a few gives and takes, obviously, because I'm heavily generalizing. Since it's not a theropod video, so forgive me. Comments. Don't hate on me in the comments for that. But give the guy a break. But they were mimicking each other quite a lot. And then all of a sudden in mammals, you see all these different varieties of experiments, and all of a sudden you just see like these big cats that just start sprouting.
Yeah, they're crazy.
Yeah. So anything else you guys? By the way, what's Harry? In your opinion, again, what was your most favorite part of this whole thing that you've seen today? From all the, was it the pictures? Was it the photographs? Was it the skull replicas? Was it something else?
Oh wow! I think definitely seeing the skull replica really blew me away, and then having it in actual context with you, Josh, as well. I'm like, whoa! I never really. Yeah, just seeing that just in context. Like, it's one thing to see them just floating around in their, in a picture by itself, but just, in that, it's just blows my mind. I think even just being able to see the, because pretty much everything I've done is isometrically sideways, just being able to see it turned around, like, my God, the third dimension. It's amazing. No, I really appreciate it. It's been absolutely fantastic. And
yeah, it's my pleasure. Again, it was funny because I know we had a lot of technical difficulties in the beginning because of the space-time continuum we're breaking here.
Yeah.
But it was legitimately a joy to see you, like your eyes literally widen, because I thought you knew about all of this. I thought Arson was sharing my notes. I was like, yeah, we're gonna have skulls. It's gonna be a blast. And then when I brought this guy up and just seeing your face, I was like, this guy. I just blew his mind.
I was gonna tell him at first, but then I changed my mind last minute. I thought, you know what? Let's just keep it a secret and see what he's done with it. This is this picture here I brought. It's just to quickly remind people that this is basically Harry's work, and that's what he does. And if you want to know more about that, you can revisit our multi-part video series, which we've done prior to this day as well, when we first introduced Harry. And if you want to know more about what Josh does, you can revisit older videos from what we've done with Josh, me and him together, when we first introduced him to the channel. So you can catch up on both of these things if you're just first time or new to the channel. And this one here, it just shows both of these Smilodon and the American lion next to a Utahraptor, basically. And a human who is taller than Harry, apparently, but the face somehow turned out to be very similar to him.
Yep.
Right,
so, literally, if you just elongate me by like an extra 10 centimeters, this would suddenly be anatomically accurate.
Get in there, man.
Yeah. Are you happy with everything we've got, or do you want to bring up something else, or shall we wrap up already? How do you feel?
Sure.
I'm cool. Like I'm trying to see if there's any other skulls I got around here. Like I think I got we went through the Tasmanian Tiger, Tasmanian Devil. We did a bear skull.
Yep.
Smilodon. We did our African lion skull. I don't have much. I mean, I have like a cassowary foot. That's about it.
Oh, wow. Cassowary is amazing.
Yeah, I love cassowaries. They're so much fun.
Oh, they're fantastic animals.
They're almost like the modern day oviraptors.
Yeah,
they have.
Let me see. So that's that kill claw right there.
Yep, that's the one. Let's hold on. Can you keep it the way it is? Just yep, there we go. We can see that now.
So this is the world's most dangerous bird because of that, mostly. It's known to lacerate people. I don't know if there's been any recorded deaths. Do you know of any incidents?
Possible.
Yeah,
I've heard of people dying from getting gutted by that claw. So or getting cuts that bleed out. They are very dangerous, but that said, apparently you have to do something to really annoy them to actually get them to do that to you. So apparently you're safe if they're around. It's not like, coming across a mama bear in North America or anything like that, or leaving your car windows wound down in Kruger Park. You don't want to walk up to it and try to touch it, I think, is the takeaway message. And they grow huge as well. They're like the second.
Don't fuck with it, basically, is the message.
Yeah. They're like man-sized or bigger. They're not as big as an ostrich, but if you actually take an ostrich and make its legs shorter, you got a cassowary right there.
Yeah, no, I've seen. Oh, say that again, Arson.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interject like that. But do cassowaries have proportionally longer necks than ostriches, or they're about the same?
I'd say shorter.
No.
They're kind of an ostrich squished.
Yeah, the ostrich is the largest land bird alive. We've since have larger land birds that were just hunted to extinction. But today the ostrich is the longest. Just the neck, the legs, the body. It's just a big bird. Cassowaries are huge, though. I've seen them in person. We have one here in the Los Angeles Zoo, and we have a whole Australian section that we have Cass, and we have Tassie Devils and all these fun animals. And this is how dangerous they are. Not that, again, like you said, it's not like a mama bear, but because we're in LA, people do stupid things. No, it's true. Like, here's how stupid people in LA are. And it also gives you a mindset into, just to go back to big cats real fast. We had an incident at the LA Zoo years ago. I want to say it was 2007, 2006. There were teenagers that were just being complete. I don't know if we've kept it PG for this time, but
we've crossed that path.
So they
also we have an Australian on the show, so that's perfectly allowed. If there is an Australian guy, we can curse.
So they were being complete dumbasses, and they were taunting the tigers that we have on display here at the LA Zoo. And the tiger exhibit is huge because that's to keep the tigers in. It's got very tall walls. It's got a huge moat because people tend to confuse how long tigers can leap. Tigers are one of the largest big cats to leap per body size. Like, these things can jump. They're the Michael Jordan of the big cats. And these guys were pissing off the tiger so much, and there are now signs in the tiger enclosure that say, be quiet, don't make a scene, don't be an idiot. These kids were just taunting the tiger so much that when they walked away, the tiger, it was one of a mated pair, which makes it more tragic because they had to put down the tiger, and they were actively in a mating program. And the tiger leaped across the moat up this like 20-foot tall wall that's supposed to keep it inside, entered the general population. Here's something to say about the smartness of a cat. This cat was so aware of its mission, it passed everybody. There were tons of people running around screaming. It passed everybody and specifically honed in on those kids that were teasing it in its enclosure. And it didn't get those kids. Part of me kind of wished it did at least give them a bit of a swipe to give them, their comeuppance. But that's, the power of big cats. Like, this thing just jumped over the moat. The tiger enclosure was closed so they can actually increase the size of the moat to keep the cat in. And even then, they're like, just don't do anything stupid because we've increased it by like 10 feet. We don't know if that's going to be enough. We don't want to test it. So to give you that kind of context for security here at the LA Zoo and the context for how stupid people are, for the cassowary, they've kind of done that to the 11th degree. They have a fence that's for the cassowary with a barbed wire interior so the cassowary doesn't jump in, but also so people can't access it. And then there's a secondary barrier from the gate to keep people. That's actually where the viewing area starts. So, like, we have double gated security for our cassowary here at the LA Zoo because people are idiots. People are complete idiots. But because of also this bird is so no, people don't realize how dangerous this bird is. I know how dangerous this bird is. Like, I can look at this cast and see this huge claw and be like, no, I don't need that in me in any context, you know?
Yep.
The other thing to probably note here is that a lot of people who do that, they're usually, well, as you noted, they're dumb. And secondly, they think that, oh yeah, I hear people say that, complaining, you know, like I hear them complaining that it's so scary. Oh my God, like I'm totally gonna prove you wrong. Yeah, no, you're not gonna do that.
No.
Yeah.
I'm saying this. I want to say this as someone who is going to completely ruin the party for every Australian who loves to go on about how dangerous our animals are. Cassowaries actually are dangerous. You really do not want to annoy them. It's like everyone goes on about the spiders and the snakes and like, yeah, no, I've squashed a whole bunch of funnel webs that grow in my area. The snakes, I just walk past because they don't do anything because they're snakes. The cassowaries, yeah, you actually kind of want to be careful.
Don't touch them if you don't corner them. They're just going to run away, literally. They're not going to try to do anything to you. Snakes are literally introverts. They just like to hide in a comfortable place.
Yeah, except brown snakes. They actually seem to chase people, apparently. But I haven't encountered any, so lucky me. I've only encountered red-bellied blacks and tiger snakes, and they don't do anything. They just sit there. And then they
likes to chase people.
Sorry, the brown snake is... It's brown, obviously. It's the same family as the cobra, which is pretty much all our snakes because they're all that same kind of fixed fang snake.
Yeah.
They're for some reason really cranky. They just when someone goes too close to them, they actually start chasing after people, and apparently they try and sometimes they do that little sidewinder thing to keep pace. But their venom's actually really horrifyingly efficient. It's like they're the third most deadly snake in the world, and yeah, you have like an hour or two to get anti-venom, or you know,
or your GG.
No.
GG. Yep. Yeah, that's it.
And it also happens to be a snake that actually likes to chase you and wants to envenomate you as well for some dumb reason.
It's but I mean, if you keep your distance and if you're near red-bellied black snakes, that's the handy part. And yes, it's an actual black snake that has a bright red belly. It's not that venomous, but it's huge, and so as a result, it actually eats the brown snake because it's like 3 times bigger.
So they do have natural predators in the wild that would happily take a snack.
Yep, the goannas too. If anyone doesn't know, goanna is what we call the lace monitor. It's pretty much all the monitor lizards on this continent, and they all love to eat snakes. If they want to eat a snake, there's nothing the snake can do. It just gets eaten. That's it. They're too fast, they're too heavily armored, and their teeth and jaws are too strong. They just bite into them, and that's lights out.
It's game over. So it's like a monitor goes around the Australian continent and be like, hey guys, I feel like some noodles. Let's go grab some snakes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, speaking of which, don't pick up monitor lizards. They can bite fingers off.
Yeah.
Last thing. But they don't do anything either. I've actually walked past one. It was weird actually. I was walking along this bush trail with my girlfriend, and I was saying, it's fine. There's nothing scary here, and this giant 5-6 foot long monitor lizard was just walking along the trail. And I actually at the time made a joke saying, oh, you want to be careful of those. They'll use their big claws because they think you're a tree and they'll climb onto you. And then I actually saw one and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. So I kind of was edging around it as it was walking past. They just decided to just lie down and have a nap. And I'm like, move. And it actually got up and moved. It was weird. It actually, after I said move, it stood up slowly and walked away into the bushes and just cleared the path. It's like, thank you.
What a polite lizard.
So yeah, they have no fear of humans either. So they're not going to be something that tries to run away. They just, yeah.
How much do you guys want to bet that if these lizards spend enough time in Japan, they would already teach them how to bow?
Oh yeah, the bowing deer.
I've actually seen them. Obviously, from videos and like photographs. My cousins went to Japan. Lucky them, because I'm dying to go to Japan one day. But they filmed it, and they literally just like walk up to them and they just go like bowing their heads and just totally like it's normal thing, and then they walk off. It's like they say hi and then they just walk off.
Those deer know how to use zebra crossing, by the way. They actually know that if they want to cross the road, they go to the actual, striped line crossing, and then they wait, and then they cross over on that particular part because I think they've seen people do it. Yeah, they're really clever.
Yeah. No, I think most mammals, and even some bird species, I've seen all kinds of animals just kind of adapt human behavior just to do like crosswalks, things of that nature. I know in LA, because we're so densely populated, but we have a cougar species we're trying to keep healthy. And they're starting to build nature crossings over the highways because a lot of cougars sadly die because of car strike. So they're now actively trying to make crossings because not only that, the cougars are now starting to invade domestic populations. Now, mind you, these are the same idiots that are surprised they moved out in the wilderness and saw wildlife. But they don't realize, like, hey, we're not giving these animals any territory because not only did we move into their backyard, we cut their territory in half because of all the highways. So now they're building highway bridges for these species because there's no natural crossings for a highway, save of a bridge. So that way they can actually get to wider territories without trying to cross like the 101 freeway or the 10 freeway and risking getting struck by a car. So animals are smart when it comes to going over obstacles, but we also got to make sure we give them the opportunities to get around those obstacles, or else we give them no choice but to cross a busy freeway or some kind of terrible thing of that nature.
I remember back in 2014, when I was in LA, but that was obviously before me and you actually got acquainted, because obviously if I knew you back then already, we would have met up and done a video or something like that. But whenever that happens, we'll do it. And I noticed that there were a lot of, you call them freeway, we call them highways, the same thing basically. And it's basically like they're mounted on these big pillars and they're above, the ground levels. And there's like so many of them with different layers and different altitudes, different junctions going like back and forth. I was quite impressed, in fact, because you don't really get that sort of stuff around here in the UK, because everything is just much smaller here in the UK in that sort of sense. Roads are narrower, everything is smaller.
Yeah, it's both a testament to our ingenuity and our stupidity, because we're like one of the most geological active areas in the world. We're right there in the Pacific Ring of Fire with the San Andreas Fault. So we are earthquake territory. What better thing to build in earthquake territory than like a 10-tier freeway system? But I have a phobia of bridges, not because I don't like heights or bridges, but because I'm aware like at any moment we're going to get earthquakes, and we've already had earthquakes that have collapsed bridges. San Francisco had earthquakes that collapsed bridges, double-decker bridges that just sandwiched cars. Northridge earthquake, we have bridges that have collapsed because they're concrete. We try to do earthquake-savvy building techniques, which I think is an oxymoron. But it's like we like to build things high, which I'm like, I get it, guys, but the earth moves, like the earth, it moves, like
it ain't going to stop moving.
Like just a little bit of humility would go a long way versus like these swirling. Again, come to LA and see them when you can, as soon as the country opens back up, but because they might not be there for too much longer.
I might come in and they'll be like just like rubble.
It'd be like the tar pits. Once there were buildings here, but they went extinct.
Right. God forbid the earthquakes got
I mean, technically, Harry, is LA closer to you for flying than it is to Britain? I would presume so.
It is. I think it is.
I think it is.
If you want to meet up, in a between place, if you look at, like Asia, Australia, America, and all, like Europe, etc., meet up in America.
Yep, absolutely.
the meetup, we're likely going to be doing it in the US whenever that's happening. And because there's just like more things to do in the US right now overall, because there's just tons of museums to go to for a starter. So, and there's also the Universal Park in the LA and in Orlando, and that's the thing about America. The theme parks is just a big thing over there as well, which is another story for another time. But we've done a theme park video, Josh, haven't we? Briefly, at least, we've done the Jurassic Park.
I think we did. I think when Jurassic Park the ride closed, we did a little bit of a theme park history type of thing, which I still mourn to this day. Jurassic Park the ride, rest in peace.
Anyway, guys, are we ready to wrap up, or did you want to talk about some other things? I mean, normally there's a tradition here that whenever Harry was around, we were talking a lot about food, but it's just too freaking late for food right now. I don't even want to start it, or else I'm gonna have to reach for that Snickers or something.
Yeah, I'll be restrained and not talk about food this time, I swear. So
I know you love cooking very much, Harry, so next time you will definitely share something.
Yes, new recipes. Oh God, I'm already starting. Stop me.
All right, I'm really happy then. So shall we wrap up and thank the viewers, or did you want to plug something else? First of all, before we do that, I want to let you guys know that on Facebook and on Instagram, you can find Josh. You can find him at Jurassic Con. Just type it up there and you will find it for sure. And to find Harry, you can find him either on DeviantArt, and you can find him also on my Discord server, where he also displays his work.
And you can technically find me on Facebook, but I am completely inactive on it. So you'll basically see my profile, and it'll just be like a commemoration of Harry was once on Facebook.
Yeah, pretty much. It will be like don't be surprised if you get ghosted.
It's not me ghosting you. I have no idea if anyone contacts me at all. It's like I haven't looked in years. Sorry.
I'll say within 20 minutes of this interview ending, I'm going to send you a Facebook request just to see what happens. Let's see if you're friendly.
Yeah. And technically on Messenger, so maybe I'll just, do that once a year peek over. I'm like, oh, I did. Yay.
That photo, that's 10 years ago. Okay.
Actually, it wasn't 10 years ago. It was, so I went on temporarily because my girlfriend made me upload a bunch of our holiday photos, and I'd changed my profile picture, and then I just left again.
That was proof of the relationship, right? That was like,
yeah.
Like
you need to show proof. We're together.
It's like if you play solo, nobody makes you do stuff. I just want to do my own things. Can you stop making me doing your things? All right.
Yeah, cool, all right,
guys. It's been a blast.
Sorry, real fast. I want to talk to Harry. So, Harry, you're on Discord, DeviantArt. Are there any other social media platforms you're on?
No, I mean Messenger technically, but that's it.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. So that's cool. Yeah, no, I definitely want to give you a chance to plug, because we know we've plugged the indie campaign 4 times already.
Of course. To finalize, hey, I mean, at least you get if you do that, if you support it, it will succeed, and that means you get more model kits from yours truly as well. And it's always great to see some cool animals. In fact, I actually used some of Harry's size estimates to get a bit of an idea of the dimensions for the standing position for this pterosaurs, just because I couldn't find the actual numbers properly. And Harry somehow managed to find them. So I thought, you know what, I'll just do a shortcut and just look up what Harry's done. I just went with that. So
yeah,
thank you.
And sometimes when it comes to the skin and the textures, I just take a shortcut and see what Josh has done.
Yep.
That's what it's like.
Josh got
just get those residuals, Harry. Just get those residuals.
Oh, good. I mean, pretty much, the proudest thing I do is not constantly rip off Roman. It's like, okay, no, I've seen Roman's done it. I'm just going to ignore it. It was tempting, but no, I have to draw the line.
It's too good. I know it's too good. I can understand people who are doing memos. They are probably tempted to look at him and just kind of almost not exactly copy, but not like plagiarize type of copy, but copy because he probably nails the looks quite a lot. So probably you would probably imagine that. But anyways, guys, I really wanted to take opportunity to thank you for coming to my channel, both, and that was a huge pleasure having you here and showing off all these cool things and, of course, introducing Harry to my crew, well, one of the members of my quote-unquote crew, and then we'll introduce you to the others as well and see how that gets on, and I'm sure it will go hunky-dory. So, everybody who is new to the channel, make sure you press that like button and also subscribe if you're new as well. Ding the notification. Share this, share the living hell out of it because we need your support and we want to grow this community. And with that said, I've been AK Rex. We had the best and special guests right here, Josh and Harry. Thanks for coming once again, and I will talk to you all guys later. All right.